All right. Hi, folks. Steven here. So, this is a little bit of a new setup. I got a new computer earlier this week, and Ann and I had a very fun time adjusting our volume levels. Hopefully this is relatively okay. At least we should be relatively even, but you might need to adjust your volume a little bit and stuff like that. So hopefully that all works out. Thank you to everyone who is watching, whether that's live or on the restream. We always appreciate that. But today we're going to be doing our deconstructed Pokemon songs discussion. This is where we're taking a series of Pokemon songs and listening to the background elements. Yeah, sorry we're not... unfortunately, I don't have quite the musical background to sort of evaluate like key signatures and stuff like that. I can tell when a key changes, but not necessarily hear straight up what that is. So be used to that. Anne, why don't you give an update on where you are and stuff you're doing before we start the actual discussion?
Yeah, so it's a brand new year. I'm Anne. I run Pikapi Podcast, which is a Pokemon anime podcast going through the whole series from start to finish. It's been a little sporadic over the past little bit. But the episode that's going to be dropping today is in the middle of Advanced Generation. It's got cosplay and secret identities and all kind of mysteries to solve. So it's going to be good. But yeah.
All right. So yeah, that's sort of the deal there. I, of course, got out a couple weeks ago my episode, our discussion of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, the first ones, the Red and Blue Rescue Team games, the music of those got out there. Next up, I believe is I think it's the Ranger episode is the next one that'll be coming out on the feed sometime and hopefully soonish. I am looking forward to next month because it is January. The odometer did roll over a few days ago. Going to Anime Milwaukee, that was the first convention I'll be covering in a very long time. Basically, that was the last thing in 2020 that I covered. So I am looking forward to that and hope to get a few interviews out of that for the sake of all that fun stuff. Let's see. I'll try to think what else. That mostly covers stuff. Like I said, thank you. We do want to try to get into this relatively quickly. Hopefully we do get some more folks coming in to the live thing. If you do have comments on this, we're covering about half a dozen songs that we each picked out 3 like we usually do. We are excited, though, that our next discussion should be Pokemon Battle Revolution for the Wii. We should finally, after doing an episode on Secrets of the Jungle and the Pokemon 25, and then this discussion, finally getting back into the swing of doing side games with our first Gen 4 side game. So we'll be talking about that a little bit towards the end of this discussion. We also have some feedback to go over. So it should be actually about what you expect at this point. All right, well, I think with that, we can get that out of the way. We can start getting ready to do the actual discussion. As usual, this is going to be sort of the raw audio here, so you're going to get some of our flubs and mistakes and stuff. Won't be as polished as what goes out, but of course that is sort of the price of being able to do a live thing there. So let me get a little drink of water here, and then I'll get my recorder started up and whatnot. Hi, folks. Steven here. I'm on the phone with Anne from Pikapi Podcast. And in another intergenerational stop here, we're doing a discussion this time of deconstructing Pokemon songs. So let me sort of explain that just a little bit before we get too far into it. We're going to be listening to some of the background elements of various vocal Pokemon songs in this one. Certainly, if you were hoping we were to be doing sort of an analysis of some of more of the structure and like key signatures and stuff like that, unfortunately that's a little bit beyond, I think, both of our musical knowledge. The focus here is definitely going to be sort of background instruments and background vocals and stuff. And just to sort of explain how that works, ever since music has been recorded in stereo, which started in its... Sorry. My notes up.
Thank you for explaining this all, by the way, because he knows these things and I definitely do not.
Yeah, so I have a little more of an audio production knowledge than Ann does, which is fine. But in any case, ever since stuff was started to be produced in stereo, there's been various ways to sort of split that out and listen to individual elements. Now, in the early days of stereo, what they would often do is actually treat the left and right channels as completely separate. They would hard pan stuff so that certain instruments and vocals and stuff would be completely in the left channel, others would be completely in the right channel. There's a lot of examples of like the Beatles doing this. If you listen to some of their stuff, once they got into doing stereo audio. And then as you got into later stuff, what would usually happen is the vocals would be panned into the center, along usually with the drums, and then other stuff would be panned to varying degrees to the left and to the right. And that's sort of the format that we primarily use nowadays. And so you may be wondering, well, gee, how do you do that? Well, for a while it's been possible to sort of take the left and right channels and sort of fold them. You would sort of invert one of them and use that to get just sort of the stuff that's in the left and right channels without any stuff that's in the center. And that would eliminate most of the vocals. You'd still hear a little bit of the echo of the vocals, which would be what we call out of phase, and stuff like that. And that stuff has sort of matured as time has gone on. Nowadays, you have more advanced algorithms that can sort of preserve the stuff on the left and the right in the right and just sort of hollow out the center of the stereo image. And there's even more advanced stuff you can do for music that's released in like a surround sound format. You can do even more advanced stuff. We didn't quite get into that, but some of the instrumental mixes you might find on YouTube and other places, people have gone in and done like very specific filtering of certain frequencies and stuff like that, and uses of like 5.1 mixes and stuff like that to really go in there. We're not going to be quite that detailed. But we're still going to be able to talk about some more of the background instruments and elements and stuff like that because of the sort of processing. And you can totally do this on your own. Most audio editing software has like a karaoke filter or stuff like that you can totally use the same way we have. So let's sort of talk about the songs we selected. We did try to mostly avoid stuff that has commercially available karaoke or instrumental versions, with one or two exceptions. And we should also mention that the fact that we've selected songs, we sort of tried to pick songs that had more interesting background elements that we could pick out more easily this way. However, that's not really a judgment on the production of the song and stuff like that. It's not, not every song is going to have these kind of deep layering and stuff that changes, with musical taste over time and sort of the production style. It's not a judgment necessarily on the quality of the various songs we're going to talk about, or that we are not talking about. Anne, what were the three songs you picked?
Well, I picked Polkamon by Weird Al Yankovic, Chisaki Mono by Asuka Hayashi, and the TV song for the 8th season, Unbeatable.
Okay, well, I picked Have Some Fun with the Funk by Aaron Carter from the first movie soundtrack. Also from the first movie soundtrack, I picked Lullaby by Mandus, a.k.a. Will Ford. And from the second movie soundtrack, I picked Blah, Blah, Blah by Devotion to Music. We're going to have some interesting things to say about that one based on some research I did. But, Anne, we're going to start with one of yours. This is... a small... Okay. But, Anne, we're going to start with one of yours. This is A Small Thing, or Chia... I cannot remember how to say the Japanese, that first word there, but that is escaping me at the moment. You're so much better with that Japanese pronunciation than I am. But why don't you go into maybe why you picked this and a little bit of your observations there.
Yeah, so I picked A Small Thing, translation of Chisaki Mono. I picked it because this is a song that I actually have the sheet music for, and it's kind of fudging that no commercially released karaoke thing, because definitely in Japan, that karaoke is all over the place. But because it's a bit less common here, I decided it would be fine. But having looked at the sheet music for this song, and I even made a cover of it once, it's a song that I find very beautiful and has a lot going on with the background music. So I chose to pick it.
Yeah, I listened to this after filtering out the center channel, like I said earlier, and it brought out some of the background instruments. There's an organ, there's strings, there's acoustic, and a little bit of electric guitar.
Yeah.
One interesting thing structurally is it's really just Asuka Hayashi doing the vocals on this, and I just wanted to mention I did not get a chance to try this with the English equivalent, Make-A-Wish, which is a semi-translated version. It takes a fair number of liberties, but it is the same underlying melody and stuff like that. But anyway, going back to A Small Thing, yeah, it did bring out some of that, but there's not really any like secondary vocals or stuff. It's very much just her doing the main melody and stuff like that. I'm not sure. Do you have a kind of any thoughts on that, Anne?
Yeah, so like without the vocals, I found myself able to pay a lot more attention to the percussion in this, and it starts out like basically just shakers, like it sounds like rain sticks and or maracas or some kind of shaking type percussion for the most part, right up until that first chorus comes in, and like without the vocals, that transition from the minimalist of like you've just got a little bit of piano, a little bit of, atmospheric synth, a little bit of, shaking for the beat. And then the whole orchestra comes in at that first chorus and it just hits you. I found myself really appreciating that contrast. And yeah, there's like just a lot of beautiful little things in the background. Like, I don't think I've ever realized there was an electric guitar in this track until I heard that tiny little bit. And then again, it's not in the foreground, but there's a flute at one point that has a little bit of a counterpoint melody going on. It's like a lot of little flourishes within some very strong and evocative, just basic chords that are very beautiful.
Yeah, the electric guitar, I think I might have noticed that before, but it was considerably easier to hear once you sort of bring down the vocals like that. Any other sort of thoughts on this one?
Yeah, just kind of, again, what you said, like, we kind of take for granted kind of sometimes, like, the vocals of songs, and, like, the harmonies, and then once you take it all out of this song, you realize it really is just her. There's, as you say, there's not a lot of backing vocal going on. There's not a lot of harmony that she's providing. It's all in the score, and that's just not super unusual necessarily, but it's an interesting choice, and it's, again, just very, very it fits the song she's singing, where like she is by herself reflecting on her life. It
reminds me, one song I considered but did not use for this was The Extra Mile from the Pokemon 2000 soundtrack, the Laura Pausini song. And it gave a similar result. The production there is not quite as lush as what you got with A Small Thing, but kind of a similar result there. All right, let's go on to my first pick, which is Have Some Fun with the Funk by Aaron Carter. Now, those of you who follow the podcast feed closely will know that a few months ago, back in the interview, I think it was late September, it was released in early October, but I had an opportunity to interview Paul Umbach, who did some of the engineering and production work on this song. And we got a chance to talk about it. That was sort of an outgrowth of sort of the research I did for this discussion. But one reason I brought this up, the song, if you take out the center vocals, you hear that there's a very much an ethereal sound to some of the background, like I guess you could say atmosphere of that. Anne, did you kind of notice that listening to this?
Yeah, like I loved the atmospheric synth, and like that it seemed to get a bit stronger as they kind of took the location of the song from the street party to the beach. Very much appreciated that.
Yeah, it has a transportative effect, assuming that's even a word. It sort of does that. And the other thing you kind of notice much more easily there is sort of the backing voices. There is some beatboxing by Aaron and actually James D. Train Williams, who I'm sure a lot of the folks at home will recognize is also one half of the original English Poke Rap, which may explain some of the logistics behind this song that ended up on the soundtrack. But you can sort of hear a bit of a crowd. It sounds fairly, I guess, multicultural, at least a little bit there. They had about 5 or 6 different people doing the backing vocals there that you can hear much more clearly when you do this. This is one of the main reasons I picked this out. I assume you noticed that as well, Anne.
I did, yeah. It wasn't like the thing about the song that stuck out to me the most listening through this, but I definitely, noticed you can hear a lot more of the background party sort of feel and a lot of just different voices other than Mr. Carter's going on.
Yeah, and another thing I noticed is in sort of I guess you could call it percussion or drum work, is that during the verses you can hear this sound that sounds, I think, a little bit like a clock. Not sure exactly what type of clock or stuff like that, but it does sound that. And I think that sort of ties into sort of the line, this party is too short, which is a metaphor both for the sort of the song and the party that's going on itself, but also kind of a metaphor for life, and that you need to go out and enjoy things. I don't know, did you pick up on that, Anne?
I actually didn't pick up on that clock, so I'll have to listen through again. I was a little distracted. Because what I mostly noticed was, I think this is the first time I actually realized this song had chords and, a key. For me, I've always loved this song and paid attention to the beat and the percussion. Once I stripped away the vocals, though, it was you could actually play this song on a piano. There's actual music underneath it, not just this fun beat. So I don't know. Clearly I was focusing on all the wrong things.
I see. And another reason I picked this out is, well, some of the background elements are actually not that hard to pick out, because the song does make very heavy use of panning, which obviously means it still has a lot of things going on when you remove the center channel. Some of the voices and stuff are heavily panned to the left and right. I assume that, I'm not sure exactly where I wanted to go, but I just sort of wanted to point it out. I don't know, Anne, if you had any follow-up on that particular point.
Not much. I do remember, this is kind of in the generation of songs on my players and Walkmans and things where if my headphones started to get old and short out, this is one of the ones where I would hear a significant, the left earbud's not working, now I can't hear vocals, or now I can't hear this instrument or something. So definitely hard panning is part of that.
And I wanted to toss out one thing that's not directly related, but to our discussion topic, but is related to this song. The song, as well as a couple others on the soundtrack, kind of gets a fair bit of flack for not having a ton to do with the movie. It's not actually used in it. It's not even lyrically all that tied to it. I just kind of like it because I think it's just a well-produced and written song. I will definitely give it that. I did kind of want to toss out, though, this song takes place, at least partially, in sort of an urban environment and stuff. Do you think this would have worked well for a year and a half or so later for the third movie, Short, which does take place in a city and stuff like that and has a bit of a party at the end?
Yeah, actually. Yeah. That would have worked perfectly, especially because the city life we see in that third movie, Short, is kind of down on the street with the people and everyone just kind of having fun in a back alley sort of thing. When I say people, I mean Pokemon, but the drift,
Yeah, so those were kind of a smattering of things I noticed listening to the background on that particular one. But I think we can go ahead and move on. And let's move to your second pick. This is Unbeatable, the Season 8 theme. And specifically, I think we both listened to the TV version, which is only about a minute long, kind of unfortunately. I'm not sure if we have a good version of the one from the Lucario and the Mystery of Mew that we can use in there. But I kind of mentioned, I forgot to mention kind of earlier, if you try to do this with a low bitrate MP3, this process of removing the center channel, it actually doesn't work out that great because those algorithms that do that compression tend to remove out the stuff that you're not supposed to hear, which in this case is some of the stuff we're trying to listen to here. It works best if you use a straight-up lossless rip from a CD or something like that. But going back to Unbeatable, really the main note I came out with this one was rock organ. And I assume you have some other thoughts on this one.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite, like maybe even the favorite of mine Pokemon openings. So I picked it mostly because I wanted to have a chance to like really figure out what it is about it that like fills me with such emotion. One of the things I noticed was there's like a fun little agitator right as we're going into the chorus. I noticed a lot of like just little things, little sound effects. Like, yes, the chords are very warm and like kind of just give that rock feel full of energy. But when the tail end of the chorus, there's like almost something magical happening with the instrumentation. Like it becomes very soft and there's like a lot more treble notes. And it's like there's a lot of little things going on to this song that make it not just like, yeah, high energy, Ash is full of winning vibes, but like it takes you on like different emotional journeys through the course of one very short song. And the lyrics aren't really the cause of that. It is like these little flourishes and these little extra instruments and sound effects and, you know, like agitators and mixes and things that are making that happen. And I found that very cool.
Yeah, this is one I definitely kind of wish. There are some vocals that come out towards the end there. It's kind of common for like these types of songs for the chorus to have more of these sort of background elements, like some of the backing vocals might be widely panned, or the harmonies or stuff like that. I think there's a little bit of that in here, definitely towards sort of the end there. Any other sort of observations there? Like I said, I definitely noticed the sort of the rock organ a little bit more with listening to it this way. But and what kind of any other thoughts you wanted to share on this one?
Well, yeah, to just piggyback off what you said, yeah, like the whoa is like there are so many layered vocals in there, yeah, and they are not all panned with the melody. So even though you cut out the lyrics, that part still remains, as well as, you know, the main cast shouting out advanced battle and things like that. So there's definitely still some vocals in here, even after you remove the main.
Yeah, so kind of in between the previous two songs we discussed there in terms of what you're going to find in the background elements. All right, well, I think we can move on to my second song, which is Lullaby by Manda, a.k.a. Will Ford. I think we've sort of run that well dry on making, I don't know, I don't want to make too much fun of that. It is just sort of an interesting tidbit that the Bad Girl Pop has a song on the first movie soundtrack. But this sort of actually kind of follows from a discussion we did during our Pokemon 25 album discussion last time, that this is a Jigglypuff song. It is, I would say, a fair bit different than Take It Home by Mabel that we discussed in the previous discussion. What happens here is that when you kind of remove the center channel, which has the main vocals, you'll hear sort of all the vocals, I believe, are pretty much done by Manda on this one, but you'll sort of hear I guess supplemental is maybe the best way to put it. I put down actually that there's a bit of an enveloping quality to it's mostly on the choruses, to the lullaby and so on and forth. And I found that very interesting and very much sort of reflective of Jigglypuff, even though I'm fairly certain the song was in no way written for that character or with that character in mind. I don't know, Anne, I assume you kind of noticed that as well?
Very much the same, yeah, the little harmonies or vocal flourishes or whatever you want to call them. Kind of appreciating like just all the little sound effects as well to kind of tie it into Jigglypuff and like just the very R&B nature of this song. Yeah, you can hear a lot of things that you kind of take for granted when the melody is going on.
Yeah, and I also say it has a fair bit of a Latin flavor to it, especially with the acoustic guitar and the sort of the trilling of, I'm not sure if that's the guitar itself or whatever, that you hear, which you can definitely hear when you're listening to the full thing there, but just comes out a little bit more there. And And to be honest, it's not completely dissimilar we talked about the transportative qualities of Have Some Fun with the Funk when we talked about that. But this kind of gives the song kind of a weightless or floating quality, which also is obviously very in tune with Jigglypuff's sort of movement and appearance and stuff like that. I assume, Anne, you also got that out of it.
Yeah, and a very dreamy quality. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't actually fall asleep listening to this, but I think listening to it this way actually gave me a better appreciation of, or a better, I don't know, understanding of what it might feel like to be in the anime and have Jigglypuff start singing and start falling asleep and stuff like that. I don't know if that was your kind of reaction, Anne.
Yeah, definitely a mesmerizing quality for sure.
So yeah, it definitely gave me a deeper appreciation for a song I already liked quite a bit. All right, well let's talk about, Anne. This is your third pick. This is from the Pokemon 2000 soundtrack. This is Polkamon by Weird Al Yankovic. I'm sure most of our audience is quite familiar with him. We'll have some interesting comparisons in this one since he usually does a polka medley on each of his albums. But why don't we start with Polkamon itself? What did you sort of find when you sort of peeled back the main vocals on this one?
Well, of all the tracks I picked, this is the one that feels the most involved. It feels like there's just so many instruments and sounds playing counterpoint all on top of each other. Like, again, if we broke down the actual score, I'd find that wasn't actually the case. But it feels like so much is going on, and I do love that about this song. I don't know if that's typical of polka necessarily, but it's not just like chords. Like, there's so many flourishes. There's so many counterpoint, like full-on melodies going on. And then stripping back the vocals, you realize what a wild party is going on in the background with all the little supplemental vocals for what I can only assume is Pokemon having a great time at this party. So it is a full track, and it's like it almost feels more busy once I take out his vocals than when he was actually there. Like, by stripping it away, it almost seems to be more busy and full. And that's a very interesting quality too.
Yeah, polka is definitely a very festive music genre that is supposed to bring in, stuff from the crowd and stuff like that. Obviously, a lot of the voices are being done by, I assume there's some stuff from Al. I assume there's also some stuff from like the other band members, like Bermuda Swartz and some of the other folks, Jim Chemo West and some other stuff like that. Now, obviously, I mentioned that Al, most of his albums contain some sort of polka medley. I think, the most recent one was the standalone one he did of various songs from Hamilton, sometime after his last album. But I compared this to the medleys on the adjacent Weird Al albums. So there's Polka Power off Running with Scissors. Give me a second there. And then there's also Angry White Boy Polka from Poodle Hat, which was the album that came out a few years after this. Sorry. My nose is getting a little bit stuffy or something. I don't know if it's dust or what, but...
Well, I've heard it's very cold where you are right now, so...
Yeah, it's warmed up to 6 or 7 degrees Fahrenheit. But I listened to the same process on those where you remove the center channel, and you hear some of the same stuff. I don't know if it's because Polkamon is a much shorter track. It's only about a little over 2 minutes, as opposed to the medleys, which tend to be like 4 or 5 minutes. But there's more, percentage-wise, there's definitely more shouting and other stuff in the in Polkamon than there is in some of the other ones. Like I said, I don't know if that was just because it was shorter or because it was more focused at kids or stuff like that. But in comparison to those other ones, are a little more. I don't know if sedate's the right word, but a little more. They go a little less hard over the course of the entire medley there. I don't know if you had any particular thoughts. I assume you've heard some of his other polka medleys. I don't know if you had any other thoughts there.
I mean, I've heard some of them. Like, I think the whole world heard the Hamilton one. But again, I don't think I've listened to him as extensively as you have, or to polka in general, to make a well-informed comparison. But yeah, I definitely feel like the energy and the, I don't know, like the invitation the music gives to like become a part of it and to like add your own little shout of joy or whatever. And that's very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to be complete here, I did consider this song myself as well, but eventually picked something else in its place. But I'm kind of glad you did pick out this one, since it gives us a good opportunity for comparison. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm not sure why my nose is getting congested there, but yeah. Let me get a little glass of a little drink of water here. All right, well, excuse me. All right, well, let's move on to my third pick. It's also from the Pokemon 2000 soundtrack. It is Blah, Blah, Blah by Devotion to Music. And, since we haven't really covered this song in any way, shape, or form previously, I think we're going to go a little bit in depth into some various things we found out about it. I have wanted to track down more information on the various members of this group. Mm-hmm. For a very long time, and I did unearth a little bit more with this go around, but I'm not entirely sure. Like I think this group, they have like one or two other songs. They never got super far. They may be Irish/Norwegian or whatever. I'm not sure exactly. I've seen so many different names here. I'm not sure which ones are correct. But I do know from a writing perspective, this is partially written by Steve Mack, who also wrote Flying Without Wings. So this might have been some sort of package deal to get this song or something of that nature. It does fall into a bit of an interesting subgenre of adults don't get Pokemon, which Pokemon is still around, so this song isn't as dated as it could be, but I'm guessing that's not a thing that would really make as much sense right now that some of the folks who grew up with Pokemon are old enough to have kids. Also, this is sort of a genre that I think is more, or this is a tonality that's a little more wet. This is a sort of okay, sorry, give me a second here. This is, I think, also something thematically that wouldn't make as much sense in Japan. I don't know that there's really an equivalent song for this for a variety of reasons. Like, generational culture gaps definitely exist in Japan, but sort of, making fun of your parents and stuff like that is not as common a thing culturally, because that's just kind of how Japan is. And any comments before we get into the song about that?
I mean, certainly making fun of your parents, less so in from what I've observed, obviously. And then definitely Pokemon specifically, less of a thing. But as you say, the generational gap and parents don't understand me is a universal concept. So it's like definitely the flavor of some of the wording of this song would not fly on the mainstream pop market. But rest assured, the punk subversive culture is alive and well in Japan, and many of them are frustrated with their parents too. But yeah, definitely it has its own flavor about how they sing about it. So
I also think that mass market marketing the kids' culture, pop culture type of stuff goes back a little bit further in Japan, whereas in America, I think that kind of got started in the 80s and 90s. It existed somewhat before, but not to the degree it does now.
Yeah, I'm not as sure about that, but yeah, definitely that is a thing to consider into the phenomena that was Pokemon when we were kind of first experiencing it, for sure.
All right, well, let's go into sort of the song itself. I think from a technical perspective, it is extraordinarily, excuse me. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with my nose there. It's not super stuffed up or anything, but it's enough to distract me. Appreciate folks at home putting up with this. It'll obviously be edited out for the podcast feed and stuff, but in any event, But as far as sort of the sound structure of this, it has sort of a kids taking over the music classroom type of vibe. You can hear a lot of like chatter in the background, especially once you remove sort of the center channel and stuff like that, and sort of the other folks coming in on the choruses and things of that nature. I assume all of that was much more apparent when you listen to it this way, right, Anne?
Oh yeah, like I got the vibe of like a playground more than taking, but I kind of like the anarchy of taking over the music classroom.
Well, a lot of that ties into sort of the instruments that you can hear a little better this way. Like there's a piano, there's an acoustic guitar, there's some horns, but those are actually center panned in the mix, so they actually do get kind of dropped out when you do it this way. But it's mostly instruments that you would find in a more typical school setting, rather than some more exotic stuff that you wouldn't hear that way. So that was kind of why I sort of mentioned that one. I also noticed, I had mentioned earlier that there might be, the singers might have an Irish or Norwegian background. In the backing vocals, once you bring those out more, you can hear a little bit more of an accent in those voices and stuff like that. Anne, did you notice that at all?
A little bit. I wasn't quite sure, so I didn't put it in my notes though. But as you say, if they might be of another country, like the people that they hired to do the backing vocals or the band members themselves, yeah, very easily could have an accent, and that's a very interesting little flavor.
Yeah, there are pictures of some of the folks who presumably did sing this. If you look at some of the Devotion to Music, like you can find some of their like single covers. I don't think they put out a full album, but they had a couple singles out there. Interestingly, it is sometimes abbreviated to D2M, which, given one of the acts that was on the first movie soundtrack, I can kind of see why they would spell it all out for the second movie soundtrack, just to avoid any confusion there. But they look to be like either like high school or young adult women, who at the time, of course, this was recorded like 20 years ago. And I actually kind of do have to wonder if, now that they're old enough, I think some of the folks in the names I looked up do have kids, if they've used this song against their mom to say, well, it's 3 o'clock now, I can play Pokemon, right?
I hope so. I mean, I obviously want them to be living their best life and not have their kids sassing them, but that's funny.
Yeah, excuse me a second here, yeah.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see like what their perspective is on having a song on a Pokemon CD like several years later to the future. This is not a band that we have a lot of interviews or media coverage with, so.
Yeah, it's kind of almost a one-off. Like I said, they have a single with the song called Romeo, and it has a B-side called like Shaka Boom. So if you do a search, you will find a little bit of information on them, but a little thin on like actual names and stuff. I have a couple I'm working on to hopefully find out more in the future. I do hope I can find out more about this. But one thing I did find is that not unlike another song on the Pokemon 2000 soundtrack, They Don't Understand, this song has I guess you call it a non-Pokemon or alternate version that exists out there, which I suspect was the original version that was written. I'm not totally surprised. I was a little bit interested once I found out that they had actually recorded that alternate version. Excuse me. All right. That they had produced that alternate version and recorded it, and someone got a hold of it and posted it to YouTube. It doesn't have a ton of views. I suspect that the Dream Street one, the alternate version of that, it just has more interest because Dream Street did a lot more. They put out a full album, and they're just a better-known group, with especially with Jesse McCartney having a bit of a solo career and whatnot. But Devotion to Music, not so lucky. But we did actually find this, and it's kind of interesting. Anne, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I definitely listened to it. Like, it's very cute. I feel like adding the Pokemon layer almost gives the song a little more depth. And like, I don't know, it just makes it slightly more charming. But yeah, like much of it seems the same. It's just the lyrics have changed. But it's kind of just that vibe of like, again, my parents don't get me. I want to have some fun. I'm, teacher, get off my back. I'm doing my best, but I don't want to be here. But yeah, I do think the Pokemon aspect just kind of adds a bit more specificity to the situation, and as they say, specificity is the soul of narrative. So.
Yeah, specificity is a good word to use there because it definitely, the Pokemon version has more focus, and I think they did a pretty good job of integrating some of the stuff in there. I had mentioned that the song could come across as a bit dated. They do mention Game Boy in there. I guess I don't think you could do the same thing with like Nintendo Switch. But the Pokemon version focuses much more, like the choruses start a little bit differently in parts of the non-Pokemon version, whereas in the Pokemon version, I can wait till 3, then I'll be free and back playing Pokemon is how they all go. So there's definitely more of a school-age child focus on there, whereas the non-version says, like I need to get out and do stuff and other stuff like that. I definitely strongly recommend taking a listen to it because it is interesting. But I think the Pokemon version is more focused. I think it is, honestly, they're lucky Pokemon has stuck around for 20 years after that, so it doesn't sound so ridiculous. Like if they had done something like, I don't know, if this were for some other media franchise that had not stood the test of time, this song would sound extraordinarily dated. But instead, I think it's and I kind of wondered if there is an original version, was there like a sport involved, like basketball or something? But it turns out it's the non-Pokemon version. I think, I don't know, it's not terrible or anything, but it's not the most interesting sort of question or rebel against authority song out there. And I think having the Pokemon edge gives it a little something there. So definitely take a listen. We'll try to include a link somewhere. I think the best way to find it on YouTube is just to search Devotion to Music with the number 2 in quotes for that whole thing, and you'll scroll down a little bit and you'll find it there. But definitely an interesting find, and I'm kind of glad we got an opportunity here to sort of talk about it. Very well-produced song, though, and the background elements add a fair bit of flavor and depth to it just on that end.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
All right, well, I think we can... Gosh, sorry, my nose and, like I said, some sort of mucus buildup or whatever is kind of messing with my voice a little bit. But anyway, so I think at this point we can sort of, we may revisit this topic at some point. Certainly there's a lot of material we could certainly test out and see if it produces interesting results for this in the future, but sort of summarize our findings. This is one of those things where we got fairly different, content and results and whatnot, depending on the song we chose for this. I think I purposely chose songs that had a lot of background elements and stuff like that were otherwise very difficult or not nearly as easy to pick out there. And I think you took a little bit of a different approach.
Sorry, could you repeat that? Sorry, it was.
Sorry, I hope that didn't sound too condescending or anything like that.
It had a little trouble hearing part of it.
Okay.
I feel like I missed something important, so I want to repeat.
So, sorry. In any case, let me go back there. The 3 songs I picked out definitely had more of those little nuggets or whatever you want to say. They had more background vocals and stuff that popped out as you did that. And I don't know if you had I'm trying to think. This sounds a little condescending, which is not really. I'm not trying to be high and mighty on this, just because. Sorry, let me get some water here, and I'll be back in just a moment.
Yeah, you bet.
So I think one of the main takeaways from this is you get very different results depending on the songs you pick. Some of the songs we picked had very much, lots of little vocal and instrumental things in the, the left and the right channel that were much easier to hear this way. Others we just sort of appreciated sort of the atmosphere of them a little bit more. and various degrees in between. I think, Anne, that might be one of your takeaways as well.
Yeah, like definitely, as I mentioned earlier, like some of these songs I picked because they moved me in some way, but I couldn't always articulate why. So being able to go back and take away the lyrical part of it, helped me to kind of just appreciate all the little things happening musically that made this song so special to me. And that was wonderful.
Yeah, and I don't know, what was... okay. And then what would you say is sort of the most interesting or impressive thing you found with one of these? You can pick a couple if you'd like to, but...
Oh, okay. Well, Fun with the Funk, Chisaki Mono, and Polkamon, I think, are the three that, like, were the most surprising to me. That, like, I felt like I was really seeing the song with new eyes kind of thing, and noticing a lot of things I didn't before and felt like they had so much going on that I had never really seen. So in that sense, I think those three were the most surprising in that way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Sorry. Yeah, in particular, the backing vocals and the crowd noise or the crowd singing on "Have Some Fun with the Funk" is something that was much easier to hear and kind of a big surprise. And one of the reasons actually I decided to do this discussion in the first place is that was an interesting find, and I was like, what else can I hear and listen to and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
So you're never quite sure exactly what you're going to find in there, which is always a little bit fun, and to experience a song in a new way is always pretty neat. So we may well do this again. If you want to try this on your own, if you find anything interesting, go ahead and let us know. We may revisit this topic sometime in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on, we do have a little bit of feedback to go over. So I'm going to punch up a PowerPoint here, and we'll go from there. All right, so yeah, I've got some feedback to go over here. Just a reminder, if you ever have a comment on one of our things here, you can always drop us a line at pokepress@gmail.com, or you can always try and contact me on Twitter at Pokepress, or any of the other places, like leaving a comment on a video. But in any case, we have a couple to go over, so let's take a look at our first one here. So this is an excerpt from a previous discussion. This was from our insert a Pokemon song into a movie or something else thing. This was from our discussion of bringing I Am a Collector into Pokemon, the second movie. And this excerpt I pulled out was, does Pokemon 2000's Lawrence III, which is the name of the human bad guy in that movie, he's never said it on screen, but that is canonically the name of it in the dub version at least, remind you of anybody? So in this excerpt, I sort of compare him to like a social media or tech company CEO, specifically Mark Zuckerberg. We got a comment from Charles Carpenter that says, I think he'll make a return in the World League and Pokemon Journeys, and he might be a leader in Team Break. So that first part there, I'm not so sure about Pokemon Journeys. I need to binge that a little bit more and get a little closer to current on that one. As far as being a leader in Team Break, I believe that certainly originates in the Pokemon Masters mobile game. And have you had a chance to play that?
No. Sorry.
Well, you probably should. It has some actually really great music. So in a year or two, when we finally do get to that entry, on the course we're going here, I certainly look forward to talking about a lot of this stuff in that. They've done some very interesting things in that game there. But the sort of the structure of that game is that there's a bunch of human characters, and each of them has a partner Pokemon. It's called like a sync pair or something like that. So when like the first movie remake came out, they did Giovanni and Mewtwo in there. I guess the suggestion here is they'd be doing like a sync pair between like Lawrence III and Lugia or something like that. They do all sorts of special stuff. Some people appear in there multiple times and stuff like that with different Pokemon. But that could be kind of interesting, although I'm not sure they've done anything. Like, they haven't brought Tracy in there, who's another, anime-only character in there. Tracy and Meryl would be kind of interesting, or Tracy and Scyther or something like that. They haven't done anything like that in the app there. But that might be a kind of interesting thing. Any thoughts there? I know you're not super familiar with the gameplay and stuff, but...
Well, I'm not, but I appreciate Charles Carpenter saying this so full of confidence. I don't know the story of the mobile app game, but like, if you're making a connection to Zuckerberg and the like, and this is a mobile app game, like, that might, like, and his like idea of like Pokemon are not, individuals with their own rights and thoughts and feelings, but they are just things to collect for, and that's how I will make the world a better place. This might be the place to put him, and maybe Pokemon Journeys has a storyline that would work really well with that. So I'm open to this this new direction. If I ever talk to the Pokemon company, I'll tell them to call you. And
yeah, so kind of an interesting set of ideas there. I mean, it would be kind of interesting to see him again. He has like a brief cameo in the credits of the fifth movie, the Latias and Latios movie. He does show up briefly in like an encyclopedia entry or something like that there. But otherwise, you don't see too much of him. So I'm not sure if maybe the folks behind the anime don't have any interest, or the franchise or stuff. We'll see what happens with that. But I sort of view Pokemon 2000 as sort of having a commentary on like extractive economics and stuff like that, and the side effects of that. But in any case, let's go on to our second comment that we have here. So this is, I think it's from like 2012. This is a review I did of the Blu-ray Pokemon collection. So what this is, in case you're not familiar, is that this is the four where, have come to be called the Miramax movies. So these are movies 4 through 7. So that's the Celebi movie, the Latios and Latias movie, the Deoxys movie, and the Jirachi movie. I got those last two out of order, but you get the idea. These were the four that were distributed by Miramax back in the zeros. And they've sort of been in a state of kind of limbo. It's not too difficult to find a DVD re-release of these movies. But Hyatt Gray says, these films were always cursed to be out of print and re-released so many times, which is true. You can find them like on a DVD collection if you know where to look. This Blu-ray, unfortunately, hasn't been reprinted in a while, so it's kind of hard to find and stuff like that. There's also like a Latias and Latios and Deoxys Blu-ray set, 2-movie set that also is out there. But unfortunately, they haven't come around. My sort of comment there is, yeah, these have bounced around a lot. And Hyatt did get back to me. I think I've read this elsewhere as well, is that the rights to these movies, I think, currently belong to Paramount, but I'm not sure that they have, like, digital distribution, so I don't know if these can show up on Paramount Plus or something like that. It would be nice. I guess unlike like the first 3 movies, Pokemon hasn't been able to like buy back the rights or whatever to it with these like they have with those. I don't know, Anne, any comments on the sort of the rights status of these 4 movies?
Not on the rights status. Like, I mostly just have nostalgia comments. But yeah, like, it is just very odd. Like, and I think it contributes to kind of that kind of blank era in like the Pokemon fandom, where like after Johto, like you either had the diehards who stayed with it or the people who kind of lost interest and fell off. I definitely think like the unavailability of some of the media like could play a part in that. Just like if you can't find it, you can't watch it and rediscover it and fall in love with it again.
Yeah, and one of the songs we talked about today, A Small Thing, is from one of those movies, movie 6, the Jirachi movie, which is kind of a shame. Mm-hmm. So hopefully at some point these become a little easier to get a hold of, but we'll see if and when that happens. All right, well, that does it for our feedback for this discussion. However, It's been a little while since we've had all the movie and the Pokemon 25 album and this discussion. It's been a little while since we actually covered a side game, but we are going to be getting back on that. We're going to be starting with this. We're going to be resuming with the side games of Generation 4, the Diamond and Pearl generation, which I guess is a little bit appropriate since we're recording this just a month or two after the remakes came out. But the first side game in that generation is Pokemon Battle Revolution for the Wii. So, yeah, this is sort of a follow-up to, well, in some ways it's more like the stadium games on the N64, but in terms of production it's Genius Sonority, so it follows very much from Coliseum and Gale of Darkness in terms of, the people behind it, but not so much in terms of the structure. And it's also kind of the last of its kind, because it's kind of the last game we got like this. So, we'll have some interesting things to discuss there. I don't know, Anne, how much experience you had with this particular title.
A little bit, but not a ton. By the time I got a Wii, we were already moving into the Wii U and the Switch. So I'm always late to the party on these games, but I have played it before, so.
Yeah, so definitely going to have some interesting stuff to talk about there. But until then, Anne, thank you very much for being on.
Thank you.
This has been Stephen Reich. All right, folks, thanks. So I appreciate the folks at home for their patience there. I don't know exactly what's going on there, but hopefully my voice does not sound too funny for the back half of that discussion. We do appreciate that. So hopefully sometime next month we'll have a chance to do the discussion for that, and if anything else happens, as far as Pokemon 25, next month, towards near Pokemon Day next month, is when the vinyl version of that comes out. I'm not sure exactly why they spaced them out like that, but they did. I don't know if they had production issues or what. So we'll see where all of that goes. Not sure what else. I suspect that there might be one more music video for that album that comes out there around that time, just to promote that. I don't know that the album has done super well like that. I don't know. Anne, did you have any follow-up thoughts?
I haven't been following the stats and the sales as much as possibly you have, or the general news, but I am a little surprised that by this point I haven't heard more about it or seen more of a presence of some of these songs just kind of in my feeds, on the radio, whatever. Especially since some of these songs are big name artists, a lot of them are really fun. It just surprises me I don't see more anime music videos, that I don't, hear electric on the radio as much as I thought I would. By now I would have thought it would have started to permeate the internet places or the music places I usually haunt. And I'm a little surprised it hasn't, but.
I suspect the vinyl will sell decently, just because it's a collector's item. But I don't know. I did see a post on Twitter where someone did get the CD as part of their Christmas stuff, but I'm not sure how common that was. I think it may have, like I said, as I mentioned in our discussion, especially with Wonderful, which seems to be very much patterned after Secrets of the Jungle, it may have been suffered a bit from not being cross-marketed that way, given how many jungle references there are in some of the videos and other stuff like that.
It's also I don't know if this is necessarily the case, but it is also worth considering the way we experience music is changing.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we calculate whether an album release is successful beyond just physical sales needs to change. And I don't want to say that's not taken into account in any of these records or whatever, but it just strikes me more and more that everything, all the numbers always look low, but that doesn't always necessarily mean an album wasn't successful, or that it didn't, or that people didn't necessarily know about it and experience and listen to it.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I want to call it. The other thing, remember back when we did that discussion, there was a question that slipped my mind, and I remembered what it was later. I figure I might as well ask you about it now. The question I wanted to ask is that the content of the album is very Gen 1 focused. There are some things in various places, like there's eggs, which are a Gen 2 mechanic that are mentioned in not Mabel, gosh, what's her name? Gosh, I can see it. I can see her face, and I can't remember the name. The one from Michigan, and I can't remember. Gosh. Luckily, I have it right here. It's on here. Yeah. Right? Sin. There we go. Gosh. Luckily, I had the album right up here next to the printer, but there's also like a Hitman top in one of the music videos in the 10, whatever it's called, the J Balvin song. Like you'd think that they could have pushed someone into making like a since the Diamond and Pearl remakes are coming out, into like something about something Lucario focused. Since Lucario is, even if you didn't stay past the first generation too much, like Lucario's in Smash Brothers and stuff like that. It's a very popular, and it would have timed well there. Like you could have done more with that, and that disappointed a fair number of like the long-term fans who had stuck around longer. Like one review I listened to said that there's not much beyond the first generation, and I'm not sure if that was a lack of pushing or a presence of pushing from the Pokemon Company, but it would have been a bit nice. And I think that would have been a fairly safe choice for them to go with there, and it would have comboed well with the games that we're releasing and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to point if it was like on behalf of the company or on behalf of the artist who are like, well, everybody knows about Charizard kind of thing. But I agree. Like, it did feel very Gen 1 focused, and that's not always a bad thing, but there is so much rich Pokemon experience to draw from. So always a shame.
It just kind of seems like there were some, like I said, that seems like the safest choice of the stuff from the later things. I mean, even Detective Pikachu, the movie at least, has a bunch of stuff. I think it goes up through X and Y. I think Sun and Moon was a little too recent for the stuff they were working on there. But it definitely goes up through Gen 6 in that one, with the Greninja prominently featured. I mean, there is a lot of Gen 1 there, but they managed to squeeze in. There's definitely some other Pokemon, like Audino, that's in there, and stuff like that I remember somewhat probably in Golurk and stuff. Some of the more background Pokemon, they do a much better job there.
And like Torterra and
Torterra Garden, that's right. That's a big one there. So they do a better job there, and I don't think it would have been a hard thing to push some of the stuff into doing something there. A lot of very Pikachu references, which is not unexpected, but maybe a little too, makes the thing a little more repetitive and stuff, and like compared to some of the stuff on some of the repurposed stuff there. But I wanted to kind of point that out as sort of a side topic there, as something we did not get to, because it slipped my mind as a criticism of the 25 outlet. It's more like 2 or 3 years worth of stuff in a lot of cases. And like I said, I wanted to point out Lucario there just because I think that is a super safe choice, that if you want to get one of the later generations, and especially with, like I said, the Diamond and Pearl remakes, to get something themed around that character and that Pokemon, it's a pretty well-known one, like I said, from being in Smash and stuff. So even people who haven't been following Pokemon after the first generation or two too much know who Lucario is, at least to some extent, and stuff like that. But yeah, so that was kind of another criticism there. Like if you search on iTunes, the search results, if you just search the word Pokemon, which I frequently do, the listing of albums in there in search results, which I think is a combination of relevancy and also popularity and sales and stuff. The Pokemon 25 album doesn't even show up in like the, before it cuts off, less relevant items, which is sort of a thing there. They had to start cutting stuff off, and mostly I think just because iTunes was getting so bloated they couldn't show as much stuff there and give you actual paging options and stuff like that. like the Secrets of the Jungle EP is still ranks relatively well, but the Pokemon 25 album, you really have to search that out. And if you actually search Pokemon 25 on there, the first result you get is that single that Post Malone did the cover of Always Want to Be With You or whatever. Or Only Want to Be With You, whichever one it is. But, yeah, so I do think that album has some definite missed opportunity factor there. And I kind of wanted to point that out. That either there was not enough or too much interference from the Pokemon Company.
Yeah, that's definitely fair to say missed opportunity. Like, I mean, who's to say what the best choices are? But definitely there were different paths that could have been taken, different options that could have been explored that weren't, and it's a shame. We want it all.
Yeah, because I think that one of the criticisms of this, from some of the folks who want to see more diversity in the merchandising and stuff like that, is that basically what they're promoting is always Gen 1, whatever generation just came out, and then whatever generation that they're remaking. And the other, at this point, 4 or 5 generations kind of get left to the side for the most part. I mean, they're doing some stuff with, like, Gen 5. In the Arceus game, we have new forms of the Zoroa and Zoroark for the Hisui region. So it's not like they're completely ignored, but...
Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Here, they didn't even really seem to get some of the safer choices. Like, there's nothing that's really Sword and Shield based, or based really around Gen 4 either. And sort of the other main criticism being people wanted to see more explicit Pokemon versions. So we'll see what happens with the vinyl version. So I don't think Pokemon lost their shirts over this, but or Universal Music, whatever their share of the costs was. And I do hope in the future we do still see more of these types of collaborations, at least in regards to like the movies and maybe some of the game promotions. I know that they are doing. Speaking of musicians, Christina Aguilera's daughter, Summer Rain, who is apparently a big Pokemon fan, and was probably even more disappointed than I was that Mommy saw in New Strikes Back Evolution. Got to play a little bit of Pokemon Legends Arceus a week or two ago, or whatever, sometime last month. Christina herself did a spot for Nintendo for some of their games not too long ago, where she sort of met up with her kids and played a little bit. It turns out she's actually a pretty dedicated gamer. I had mentioned in some of our stuff how she spent back in 94 or 95, she spent a year or two in Japan doing some performance work there. But she also apparently she has back at her mansion or whatever has a Mario Kart arcade machine there. Someone it says and stuff like that. So,
well, awesome. Welcome to the fandom. You've been here a very long time. Sorry, we didn't introduce ourselves.
So, I assume that once we get close to the game, they'll put out something with that. So we'll see what else they pull there. Like I said, if they do a remake of the second movie, I'm hoping they learn their lesson. I'd like there's a resounding meh regarding Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution for a lot of folks. And it extends to a large chunk for the music. But I do think there's also a fair amount of folks who are pretty, I don't know if the disgust is probably overselling it, at least for the majority of it, were disappointed by that movie musically. If there's a remake of the second one, I'm hoping they can work some of that stuff out a little bit better. Any other thoughts on your end you want to toss in before we end the stream?
Maybe just, as far as the album Pokemon 25 is concerned, we want to see more of this, and it's possible that playing it safe the first time around to test the waters maybe the next one will be a little bit more ambitious and diverse. We'll see.
Yeah, so we'll kind of see where that goes. I'd be curious to know. Like I said, I think there was not enough pressure from Pokemon to make it more broadly based, or there was too little, or there was too much, and they shoved them, and that made it even more focused on Gen 1 than you might expect. So, and the music market is very different from what it was 20 years ago. And like I said, I think it also did not benefit from not being tied in the marketing to Secrets of the Jungle,
right.
Despite the apparent references in lyrics and in some of the videos and all the other stuff like that. Which seems very odd. All right. Well, like I said, we've, I think, set our piece on that for at least a little while. Next discussion should be Pokemon Battle Revolution, and stuff like that. So, we'll see how all that goes together. But thank you very much. And like I said, this is a new setup, so let us know how it went from a technical perspective. And we'll try to work that out a little better for next time. Hopefully there were at least fewer dropouts, despite me doing actual video here, because I do have a new computer. All right, folks, thanks.